What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Faithful Agent Podcast. I am thrilled that you've joined me once again. We've got a great guest, Grayson James, with us today. The youngest guest, actually, I think that I've ever had. Now, Grayson, I think I'm young because in this industry, it's mostly like old people, right? Let's be
I've
honest.
kind of gotten that
And you
sentiment.
know that, right?
Yeah.
Right. But compared to you, I'm not, buddy. So it's cool to have a perspective and an audience. You're going to enjoy his perspective, not only in his youth and getting after it, but also in growing up with a dad who's been really successful in this industry. So I'm excited for this conversation. But as you guys know, before I jump into that and introduce Grayson to you, I've got to do my dad joke. Now, this is not specifically a Christian dad joke. My apologies, audience, but my good buddy Keith Hinton sent this to me on Father's Day. So here's the question. Where do I keep all of my dad jokes? In my dada base. Huh? That's pretty good.
Good
I mean,
one.
it's like most jokes, Grayson, are like kind of your reaction. They're good
Uh,
enough to like a little bit of a laugh, and you're like, all
I'll
right,
give
that
you,
was
I'll
kind
give
of
you
dumb.
credit for that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was a good one. I didn't know where it was going.
You're right, right. So, I like that. And I'm a database guy. So I think that worked out perfectly. But before we dive in, as always, agents, if you guys need help and you need support in growing your business, selling 3 to 4 homes a month by relationship, we have a Faithful Agent School community totally free in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. Leave a 5-star review, share this with a friend. But let's dive into our conversation today. So, Grayson, thank you so much for joining me, buddy. So you might recognize the last name James. Not that that's not a common last name, but his father is Jared James. You may be familiar with him through Instagram or a lot of the training and teaching that he's done, and I think been really helpful and valuable to this industry. So, Grayson, man, thank you for coming on the show, buddy. Give me a quick background, who you
All
are, and we're going to dive right in, buddy. Yeah, go ahead.
right. Well, I'm Grayson James. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Connecticut. I'm just now getting into the real estate industry. I have a little bit of a background as an ISA and inside sales agent, just cold calling, and then I've been to numerous listings and all that. So I have a decent
Yeah,
background in the real estate industry, and now kind of getting full into it.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, so, okay. So growing up, right, in your family, now how long has your dad been in real estate, right? I mean, I feel like he kind of came into national recognition recently, but I
Mhm.
assume he's been in for a while, right? So did you kind of grow up in that space?
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember being like 4 years old, going to showings with my dad.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah, very like vivid memories. But yeah, he probably got into real estate when I was around 3 years old. Cause I remember he had a different job and it was a big thing. He completely quit it and went all in on real estate.
Wow.
And then since then he's never looked back in it.
Wow.
And
Yeah, so you really did grow up, right? I mean,
yeah.
since you're 3, 4 years old, you've been living in that real estate space, right? So, I think a lot of us would be curious because a lot of the audience, like myself, I've got 4 kids, we've got one on the way, would be curious to hear first from your perspective, what things do you think maybe your dad did well, right? In raising you, because I think living with an entrepreneur is different, right, than someone who has a 9 to 5 job, and either one is necessarily better than the other, but
Yeah.
managing family time and, maybe some of the things you did well, maybe some of the challenges that you could help us gain awareness in. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah. So no, growing up, my dad did travel a lot because he did a lot of speaking events. But one thing that I feel like he did really well in me and my brother's life was that he was always like there for like all the little and big events. Like that was his priority.
Mm,
For example, like I'm a big soccer player. Every soccer game on the weekend, he'd be there. He would make
mm,
sure he drove me to every game. We'd have a conversation before. And like those little moments are the moments that stand out, I feel like, in every kid's life. Like
mm,
I'm always gonna remember driving to soccer games with my dad. I'm always gonna remember driving home from soccer games with my dad after a bad game, after a tough loss. And
mm,
he was like always there for that. And that kind of is like what built me and his relationship. So
mm.
I just feel like focusing on like those like moments is how, even if you're super busy, how to keep that relationship going and how to like teach your kids how you want
Mm.
to be.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I love that, man. I mean, are there things that you think maybe were challenging that when you one day perhaps become a parent, right, you'd say, man, that was tough, or I wish I could have seen him more? Because there's always that tug, right, of I want to pursue, especially as believers, right? I want to pursue, I want to be obedient, but also ambitious to honor the Lord because he made me that
Yeah,
way. But
definitely.
there's no set schedule, right? Scripture doesn't say, well, you got to do this from 9 to 5 or 9 to 8, and then you got to be home on the way. It doesn't tell us that, right? We're kind of making it up with the wisdom of those around us and the wisdom of Scripture. But, are there things that you think, hey, for me as a parent, for our audience as a parent, hey, pay attention to these things maybe your kids are noticing?
Yeah, no. So I feel like as a parent, like you have to look at like definitely, I feel like he made sure to like really not push his faith on me,
Hmm.
but really like show me, him and my mom, to really like show me like how God has a path for us and
Hmm.
all that. So I actually have that scripture tattooed on me, like through Christ
Hmm.
we are and what we're called to do. And
Hmm.
that, I feel like that's what my parents did really well, is they really drove that home and they connected that to like what my dad was doing. And
Hmm.
that, I feel like, really put me at ease. Like, I see why he's doing this. And
Hmm.
like, even though he was busy a lot and he was traveling a lot, it like created like a realization in my head of like why.
Hmm. That's really good. I mean, that's a great reminder to, you said something I think that stands out is connect the work that is being done with the reality of what we believe the Lord has called us to,
Yeah.
right? If the Lord has called you to X, Y, and Z, then pursue that and make sure your kids understand why. You know, one of the things, Grayson, that I challenged, or I had a challenge with, and I think I'm slowly getting better, but you know, every time I would leave to go show houses and do whatever the agents, you know, as agents do, I would say to my kids, "Oh, sorry, kids, Daddy has to go do
Yeah.
X, Y, Z." And now I've transitioned to, "Hey, kids, Daddy has to go do this, and it's good because this is how Daddy provides for my family, right? So, or our family. So it's even just shifting the mindset of it shouldn't be an apology, right, for me to go
Yeah.
out and pursue what the Lord has placed in front of me. So I love that, the connecting of the
I was
mission,
about to
right,
say,
for you to see. Yeah.
applying in perspective to like why he's doing what he's doing.
Mm. Yeah, that's really good. So okay, so you grow up in that, right? You grow up with in an entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
Your dad's doing well, things are working well. How do you grow up and stay hungry, stay excited about what you're trying to do, right? Yeah, walk me through that.
Yeah, I love this question.
Yeah.
There's this whole like narrative where like you have to come from poverty in order to be hungry for success and
Mm.
like all of that, which I could tell you firsthand that I really disagree with that. And again, it goes back to like assigning perspective to things where I look at my dad and instead of being like, oh, like I don't have to work again, like, I don't have to do any of this. I look at it be like as almost as a role model, like
Mm.
this is what's achievable for me.
Mm.
I'm going to be extremely upset if I can't do that. And that's what
Mm.
drives me, like almost like a friendly competition with my dad in a way where like, oh, like that's my dad. He's exactly like me. I need to be able to do what he's doing, if not better. And that's what really drives me.
Mm.
So there's two ways, there's always two routes you could go because you hear all these stories about people coming from poverty and then being super successful, but you also don't see all the stories of people come from poverty and stay in poverty.
True.
Uh,
Right.
so it's just again like the narrative that you like assign to your situation where like I am around like people in the real estate industry that do very well. And instead of being like, oh, like I don't have to do anything else, whatever, I want to be this.
Mm. So is it for you? Because I think you know, it's interesting. You said the narrative, and actually, I'll just ask you a question before I ask another one. But what do you mean the narrative you assign? What does that mean to you? Unpack that.
Yeah. So a lot of times I feel like what could happen, like when you see someone super successful and stuff, you can almost like want to like freeload off it
Hmm.
and just kind of like push aside and be like, okay, like I don't have to do anything, like whatever. But when you sign the narrative, like looking at it in the way of like what's possible, and you're talking to these super successful people, and they're just regular people, like they're just like me, they're
Yeah.
just like everyone else. But then what they've achieved is so like insane. It kind of makes you be like, why can't I do that? Like
Hmm.
that sort of mindset is what keeps me hungry.
Hmm. Do you think that you were born with that mentality, Grayson, or do you think that's something that you've worked on and developed?
I think I was born with a lot of it, but then also growing up, I became hungrier and hungrier just because like I know my dad has conversations a lot with me about like what I want to do when I'm older, like just planning that sort of stuff out. And just like I just love the idea of like getting into it and like building stuff and like the like very entrepreneurial mindset.
Hmm.
So I was born with some of it, but then I know that my dad also kind of drove home like that last bit to kind of like get me really hungry and like want to
Hmm.
get started.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? So you are only 18, but you've already done ISA, which is probably the least enjoyable job that anybody could have in real estate, I would
Yeah.
imagine. Some people might like it. I don't know, right? But you get in there and you're kind of put into this position of, well, this is just a grind anyways, right? So was that your decision? Was that your dad's thought? Like, how do you end up in an ISA role even?
Yeah. So one of the real estate brokerages in Connecticut reached out and then he like, offered me an internship and I went and did it. And I just kind of the way that I was looking at it was like I need to make myself more worth it. Like I need to make them more money than they're paying me as an intern,
Hmm.
like 17-year-old kid. Like I can't come in and just be a mess. Um,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like I'm
Yep.
gonna make myself look bad. So the way I looked at it also was just a learning experience. Like the sales knowledge I gained from it and just how the whole industry works is what just
Mm,
kept me driven and
mm.
like got me really excited about it. So that was pretty much that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, but you get into this role, right? And even in that, there's wisdom in like one of the things I struggle to do, my oldest is only 8, but is intentionally allowing them to struggle and fail, right? And do hard things. Because to your point earlier, if you live and you see someone that's successful around you, you could just kind of coast. And
Mhm.
I mean, your parents might let you, might not, and it sounds like yours wouldn't, which is good, but you could just coast and make everything as easy as possible for them. And it's, hey, you never failed ever because you are never without whatever. And it's like, no, there's actual, and not just for our children, right? But even for adults, even for people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, the
Yeah.
practice of getting out there, understanding failure is an event, not a person,
Mhm.
right? And continuing to pursue what it is that the Lord might have for you, right? I think that's what's so interesting as a believer is I don't know what the Lord specifically has me for, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if he's calling me, for example, as an agent, I don't know if he's calling me to sell 1,000 homes a year. He doesn't stamp that on my head and say, here's what it is, go get it, right? I
Mhm.
don't know what my potential is another way to say it, but I do know I haven't maxed out my potential. And I think everybody's aware of that. But we have to have those moments of practice where I try, I fail, and it's just a choice to say, if this is really what I think that the Lord might have for me, I need to get up and try again, right? If the Lord told me right now to go to Spain and become a missionary, if he verbally told me that, right, which he wouldn't, but if he did, it
Uh,
wouldn't matter what gets in my way, right? Everything that would get in my way, it would sure be a setback, it'd be a challenge, whatever, but I would do whatever I have to do to get there. And for us, it's just that we lack that conviction to say, perhaps this is what the Lord has called me to. He's
yeah.
granting me this kind of platform opportunity. Maybe he won't, but shouldn't I pursue it in hopes that he will, right? Or in pursuit of maybe this is what he's calling me to, right? And I don't want to pursue something lesser than what the Lord has created me for. I think that's a struggle that we see in our industry as believers all the time. We just are less than excellent, man. We just don't pursue excellence the way that we should. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to me, right? You get into you've watched this your whole life. You get into the industry at 17, you're doing inside sales. You've got that mentality where you want to make sure that you're providing more for them than they are for you, right? Financially. And and then now you're excited about getting into business yourself. How do agents go out? Because agents right now are struggling, right? They're struggling to find their own business. This is a hard season for a lot of agents. What's the mentality that you think agents should have to go out right now and say, number one, here's what you need to be thinking about going to try and find your own leads. And then number two will lead into then how would they go find them from your perspective, right? So first, what do they need to be thinking about? What's the mentality showing up of this is what your mindset has to be when you just got to go figure it out and find that next deal? What would
Yeah.
your advice be?
Well, I mean, the thing I love about being a realtor and the whole real estate industry is straight commission. So you're almost forced to be hungry to go
Hmm.
out and find these leads and stuff. But like your mentality has to be like whether you're cold calling, doing door to door, anything like that, or just even social media marketing, every potential person you're calling, knocking is a potential client. Um, and the big thing with the real estate industry is it's all relationships.
Hmm.
Like most of the time when you're going to find a leader, they're not going to know if you're the best realtor in Connecticut. They're not
Yeah,
gonna
that's right.
know. They're going to fall in love with you as a person. And that what overall is what's going to get them to use you. The real estate industry has always been based on relationships. So if you could really drive that home, be personable to everybody you talk to, you're going to do great.
Hmm. Yeah. What then are some of maybe the tactical things if someone's here and they're saying, yeah, I get it. I just don't know what to do or where to start, right? Because I would say the majority of
Yeah.
agents are relationship based, but
Mhm.
don't actually do a good job of executing any kind of system to generate and nurture referrals.
Yeah.
But then certainly the skill set runs out when it's how do I go find business today? I mean, what would you do?
Like starting from scratch,
Yeah.
what I would do, it gets repetitive. It's annoying. Just cold call.
Hmm.
Like if you call enough people, you're going to get yeses.
Mm,
Same with door to door. You call on the people and be like, hey, so and so, like, whether you're planning on like ask them if they're planning on selling their home or anybody who knows it, you're gonna get a yes eventually. So if you're
mm,
starting from scratch and you have nothing, just go out and hustle
mm.
because you're good.
Have enough conversations. Yeah. Yeah.
All about as many like have as many conversations as you can.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's and again, as an encouragement to our audience, like I don't care that Grayson's 18. We should not despise people for their youth. Scripture says that, right? Why? Because we can learn from everyone. And your excitement and your passion, right, I think is helpful because there's a lot of age. I mean, I've been in it for 11 years. A lot of agents been in it much longer than me, like your dad has been, right? And it's easy to get burnt out. It's easy to get annoyed. It's easy to get frustrated. It's certainly easy to blame the market or blame interest rates or blame the economy, whatever it is, and not that those things aren't true, but the reality is, again, no matter your scenario, if you knew the Lord had said, this is what I want for you to do, right? Very plainly, I don't care what the scenario is, I would go figure that out, right? It's that I think that we broadly lack the conviction to say, whatever it takes, because this is exactly what you're talking about. Whatever it takes, go find the yes,
Yeah.
right? So, okay, so you're moving from Connecticut, going to Florida.
Mhm.
And is your intent to get the your real estate license and operate in Florida, or you think you're going to operate? Yeah, operate in Florida. Okay, so you're going to a new space, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, day one, brand new location, not from there, didn't do ISA work there. How do you show up? What do you do, right? In agents, whether you're new or whether you've been an agent for a while, these principles apply to you. So listen up. Yeah, what do you do day one?
Yeah. So day one, honestly, it's very like old school, getting a phone book and just cold calling or going on Zillow and looking at like for sale by or just
Hmm,
anything that could be a potential lead and just calling it and just like working my butt off.
hmm,
So I get it. Go door knocking, go circle prospecting, like all that
hmm.
is that would be my first step of action for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, do the stuff that nobody wants to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then how do you even overcome, this is just a question for you, because most of our audience is probably older, but how do you even overcome when somebody says, well, how old are you? Right? How do you overcome that aspect of this business?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with that a bit for when I get
Yeah,
into it.
nice.
But
Sure. Yeah.
no, but what my dad always tells me is like people notice like what you really like notice about yourself. So like if I come into it already acting insecure about my age, that's immediately gonna like stick out and people are gonna notice that immediately. So it's
Mm,
just going to like I'm just anybody else who's however old, like age isn't even gonna play a factor in my head while I'm doing it. And if
yeah, it's
they
good.
decide not to go forward with me because of my age, it's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
just gotta keep moving on.
It's okay. Yeah, no, that's good. Right. Yeah, it's funny. I started when I was 27, and that was really young, right, for the industry. And I remember my first listing ever, Grayson, you'll appreciate this. My first listing ever, it was a referral. I can't remember from who. And I walk in, and it's the single woman, and the first thing she says to me is, how old are you? She didn't say hi, she did nothing. And I remember saying, I'm the youngest documented agent in all of Hampton Roads, which is where I live. And I
Uh-huh.
left, she laughed and I left it at that. And I never had to tell her, right? She didn't know it was my first deal ever. She didn't know anything. And even in that context, what was interesting uh, in the Lord's kindness kind of pulled out of nowhere, right? I was wearing a suit. I'd brought my listing packet, right? Because I thought that's what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. Well, what I realized in that conversation was I am new. I am young. I don't really know what I'm doing. So, but I do know I can ask her questions. I do know I can listen well. And at
Mhm.
the end of that, great, I'll call you if I pick you. I knew there's other good agents. Anyways, fast forward a week, I get a call. Her name's Kelly Joe, and Kelly Joe says, Garrett, I want you to be my agent. And I'm like, did not expect that,
Yeah.
right? She was wondering how old I was, and I didn't know what I was doing, right? And I didn't talk about my marketing plan, blah, blah, blah. And
Uh-huh.
so I said, well, hey, please tell me why. She said, Garrett, honestly, I have no idea what any of you said. She had interviewed 4 agents, but you're the only one that I felt like actually cared. Right. And so will you come list my house? That's exactly what you're talking. That's the difference. What is the
Exactly.
differentiator in this industry? Care about people, right?
Exactly.
Like genuinely care. And
Yeah.
doesn't matter how old you are, especially as believers, we're called to do that. Right. So show up and do that well. And for you, it's this uniqueness of combining that care with the conviction to get out and just do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's awesome. It's really good to know, right? You see it where your dad, right? I assume you think your dad's built this business the right way. So I want to go do that too. I
Exactly. Yeah.
think for us as agents and anybody who's listening who's maybe a parent, to say, well, what do my kids think about this industry? And maybe do some internal thinking of, well, if my kids think this industry is terrible, then what am I saying, right? How am I encouraging my children to grow up in that, right? So, man, I love what you're doing because I also think we are in a season where a significant amount of it wasn't cool to go into real estate when I went in. Even a good friend of mine who was national 30 under 30, she went in at 23. It wasn't cool, right?
No,
But now it feels like there's a wave of people coming that are young. Like, this sounds like a
definitely.
good idea. Yeah. Do
Yeah,
you see that?
100%. Like in my senior year of high school, I had a couple of kids come up to me and be like, oh, like, what do you think about getting like a real estate license at
Hmm.
18? You think that's a good idea? Like, should I do that? And it was actually like a surprising amount of people that were really.
Interesting. Hmm.
'Cause I also think social media like glamorizes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are seeing that and they're kind of being like, oh, I'm gonna get into real estate. I'm gonna make 150 grand my first year straight out of high school.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think this the social media aspect has really popularized it,
Hmm.
just made it look very like glamorous and like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, because now every time somebody gets a listing, they do these super fancy videos. I'm like,
Yeah.
you and I both know that's not going to sell the house, right?
No,
This is
no,
for Instagram viewers, not to sell the home. But
exactly.
you're right, it does glamorize it. And again, I think for you, right, and it's such a good example, and I just appreciate all your thoughts, is it's still, right, nothing has really changed. Sure, technology is different, sure, social media, all the things.
Yeah.
Nothing has really changed. The person who's willing to work for it versus the person who's not, one of them is going to win. It's
Yeah.
not going to be the second one,
No.
right? It's always going to be the one that shows up and does the hard things that nobody else even pays attention to, that you
Yep.
don't put on social media, right? I was spending time yesterday handwriting notes, 11 years in, like, still doing those things. I'm not putting that on social media. That's not exciting. And nobody wants to see me on video anyways, right? So that's why nobody watches my YouTube, Grayson. But one day
Uh,
maybe. But that you're right. It's this, are we getting away from, I appreciate you kept saying, like, just these old school foundational things. Are we getting away from that, thinking that beautiful Instagram videos is what's going to save the day? Because it's just not, right?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely things are always changing. There's new techniques that work. But I feel like at the end of the day, like old school, like you hustle and you just have as many conversations as you can, that's always gonna work. But
Yeah.
you use social media in that same way and just get in front of as many people as you could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything is a funnel to relationships.
Exactly. So it's just more of like what way are you like what are you better at to connect with people? Like if
Mm,
social media is your thing and you're good at that, you're good at digital marketing and you could make yourself like if you could to get that connection with somebody through the screen,
mm,
I think that's great. Like if you're able to do that, I know me, I'm not great at that, like the
yeah, me
marketing,
neither.
all that. So the cold calling and just hustling is where I feel like works for me.
Mm,
But it all depends on your skill set is what's
yeah.
gonna be beneficial to you.
Yeah, such a good reminder, man. And I'm going to wrap us here, but I love that because I talk all the time about don't try to be everything, right?
Yeah,
Figure out who the Lord created you to be and be excellent at that. And that's what you said. If I can be good at uh cold calling, then do it and do it better than everybody else because you're a believer and you're seeking to honor the Lord, right? If I'm good at relationships, then be better than everybody else, not for your own glory, but for the sake of glorifying the Lord and the gift that he's given you, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about, man. So brother, I appreciate you. I'm going to ask you this. I wonder what will come to your mind. Actually, it just popped in my head, but what's one saying that you've heard your dad maybe say over and over and over again that you feel like you're going to take with you into your business?
consistency is undefeated.
Hmm.
Without a doubt.
Hmm.
Like find something that works or just stay consistent with it.
It's
Because if
awesome.
you're consistent with anything, you're gonna get better at it and it's gonna end up working out.
That's good. It's good stuff, man. Dude, I love it, buddy. If somebody wants to connect with you, I don't know if you're on Instagram or you said you're not good at social, neither am I, but how would somebody connect with you if they're like, dude, I want to talk to you, or I've got somebody who's trying to get in the industry, should connect with you. How would they connect with you, buddy?
My Instagram is my the perfect spot for that. It's Grayson J. James.
Awesome. Okay. And I'll make sure that that's in the show notes so people can connect with you. Awesome, buddy. Grayson, I appreciate you, bro. Thanks for coming in and sharing, dude. I love your heart. love that you're young and getting after it, dude. We need future leaders in this industry, man. You're going to be one of them. So thanks for coming on, Faithful Agents. We love you, and we will see you next week.